Jesus wasn't performing magic tricks. The yogis and mystics weren't breaking the laws of physics. What they were doing was something far more advanced and far more available to you and to me. They understood that reality is multidimensional and that miracles aren't random gifts from the sky, but predictable outcomes of spiritual law. Laws that respond to identity, coherence, and certainty. And what we call a miracle is actually what happens when a person aligns so deeply with the truth, so fully with their soul's knowingness, that reality has no choice but to rearrange itself. And today I want to show you what I believe is the real reason miracles happen and how you can access the same logic and spiritual precision to create what might seem impossible in an instant. Hey, it's David Baer. Welcome to A Changed Mind, a sanctuary for your spirit, a place where each and every episode I remind you of the certainty of the goodness of the future. I am your friend, your host, your guide, David Baer. So what is a miracle really? Well, miracles are dimensional shifts, not divine exceptions. They're instantaneous changes that occur that are not random, but they're lawful. And there's an entire body of work dedicated to the performance of miracles, which you may be familiar with, called metaphysics. Metaphysics means the physics behind the physics, and it is what governs the formation of our material reality. Now, what's so exciting is that neuroscience and behavioral psychology and even human energetics are starting to explain what has been right in front of us the whole time in wisdom teachings from Christianity to Taoism to Buddhism to esoteric teachings, all the way up through modern day law of attraction. And that is the idea that you attract what you already are, not what you want. So it's very important, if we want to start intentionally creating miracles, to understand how reality works. And we live in a multidimensional reality. In fact, I recently did an episode on how you live in many, many, many dimensions. This, I believe, is what Christ was referring to when he said, "My Father has many rooms in his mansion, and there is a place for you. You get to decide which room you stay in." And the idea is that in any moment, you're making decisions about life, decisions about your relationship, decisions about your health, decisions about your finances, decisions about yourself, decisions about time or your business or your career. And I want you to imagine sitting in the center of an infinite number of portals or doorways around you. And the doorways that are open that allow you to look through and perceive your reality are the doorways that you decide your life will be. In other words, what it is that you believe. If you believe that money is scarce, that's the doorway that you're looking through, the portal that becomes your real lived experience. If you believe that you can't trust people, that's exactly what you experience. If you believe you're not good enough or you don't matter, well, then that becomes your reality too. It's like Confucius said, the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't are both right. But Romans tells us that you don't have to be conformed to this reality. You can change your reality by changing your mind. So I want you to think for a moment about a time where something shifted in your life so fast it felt like a miracle. If you're joining me on YouTube, you can add it into the comments below, because we've all experienced that when we make a new decision, when we shift a belief, when we decide that life will no longer be a particular way for us, life changes. There is a corresponding relationship between what we've decided or what we believe or the story we tell about life and the way life is. You know, for many, many, many years, I lived in a life that was filled with desperation, with suffering, with financial insecurity, because I had decided that life needed to be hard. And if I wanted to be successful, I had to work hard in order to create success. And so that became my reality. I had multiple failed businesses, 2 homes in foreclosure, not a lot of money in my bank account, a tremendous amount on credit card debt. And that's when I started getting into this work. And if you know my story, I actually got into personal growth through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the beautiful thing about the steps is that it allows you to start taking responsibility for your life. In the steps, you start looking at character defects. You know, what are the things inside of me that are creating difficulty in my life, whether it's jealousy or indecision or fear or resentments, and to really work through those character defects and to start surrendering them and letting them go to a power greater than myself. And as I did that, my life began to change. I started creating more financial prosperity in my life. I started having more valued and intimate friendships. I overcame a 10-year period of time where I wasn't in a committed and serious relationship. And within 2 weeks of shifting my beliefs around relationships, I met my now wife. So everything began to change, and that sparked a curiosity in me, and that's how I got into personal growth. First reading a book on Buddhism called Awakening the Buddha Within by Lama Surya Das, and then a book on Christianity called Kingdom Principles by Miles Monroe. And all these books came to me in a series of synchronicities that were responses to a question, a desire, a praying that I had to really know more about how all of this actually worked. And then eventually I found a little book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and that really took me down the rabbit hole. But the point here is that miracles are not random coincidences or synchronicities. They're actually incredibly architected. And there's a formula for creating miracles in your life. And I'm going to elaborate on that formula throughout the rest of this episode. But the formula is pretty simple. Number one, you decide that what you desire is done. You decide. Number two, you start to live in that future experience or that future version of yourself. Neville Goddard says you feel the outcome or live in the wish fulfilled. And number three is you start living from the end. And so I'm going to break down each of these pieces for you to support you in making new decisions, living as if it's already happening, and creating an identity shift so you're living backwards from the outcome and you can start being your future self now. Now, I break this down in a multitude of episodes on this show, but wanted to put them all together into the structure or system for you in this episode. By the way, everything that we're talking about here, that you actually can just decide, start living in the experience fulfilled, and assume the new identity now, is actually backed by how the brain works. So the brain doesn't distinguish between reality and what's actually imagined. And so as you're willing to make new decisions about how your life will be, for example, that you are healthy, vibrant, and alive, that you have extraordinary relationships with incredible people doing amazing things in the world, that you matter, and that soon, you don't know how, you don't know when, but a real significant clarity around your purpose and the mechanism by which you can achieve it in the world will occur for you. All of these are decisions about life. And as you hear me share these things, you may notice they're the opposite of most of the decisions that we make. You know, that money is scarce, that we may never have a purpose, or we may never achieve our purpose, or that we can't trust people. But the brain doesn't distinguish between reality and imagination. Every single moment you're actually recording your lived experience. And so if your lived experience is of the future, without needing to know how, a prosperous future, a healthy future, a connected future, a future where you're living your full potential, you actually start to build a memory of a future that hasn't happened yet. Your brain starts to record what you're imagining or what you've decided as if it's actually occurred. And this is very significant because this is the beginning of the change of who you are. It's the change in your identity. It's the change in your resonance. It's the change in your personality. You actually start to become the future version of yourself right here, right now. And this is essential. Most people become addicted to the current life that they're living. They base what they believe on the experiences that are showing up for them in the present moment. But if you're creating your own reality, which if you're listening to this show, you believe that that's true, then the reality that you're experiencing today was actually created by previous thinking. So you do not have to base your future reality off of what's actually occurring today. The amount of money in your bank account, how you feel, the job you have. You can just start deciding, and this is step one, deciding for a different future. And I'm not so much talking about your decisions to do things. Those are wonderful things. A decision to make $1 million over the next 18 months is a wonderful, prosperous, and abundant decision. But if you've also decided that money is hard to make, or money comes and it doesn't stay very long, or in order to have extreme wealth, you have to sacrifice your health and relationships, and you don't want to do that, then it's going to be very difficult to achieve the financial goal. So I'm talking more about your decisions about life, your decisions about yourself, your decisions about reality. There's a part of your brain that's called the default mode network. And it's a structure of how your brain functions, and it's in development over the first 21 years of your life. And over time, it becomes the fixed personality embedded with all of your belief systems, your stories, your family trauma, your ancestral trauma, and it filters reality based on what it is that you believe. And so you're locked into a perception of your life right now that until you start to understand this conversation by listening to episodes like this or reading books that explain consciousness theory or the nature of reality or how to shift your reality, you'll be locked in to the same day over and over and over again, because this structure or system, this personality that has developed, consistently perceives reality the same way. And this is really helpful because it creates certainty. It's part of the survival mechanism of the brain, but it's not conducive to having an expansive life. And one of the reasons why, over the course of my journey into personal growth and human evolution, I began experimenting with things like ayahuasca or MDMA or psilocybin, what some people might describe as hallucinogenics, was because it brings down the default mode network. It allows the personality to drop and your traditional sense of perception to drop for the period of time that you're using the medicine. And so that gives you an opportunity to not only think differently, but to actually perceive differently. A lot of people describe these medicines as hallucinogenic because people who, get into an ayahuasca ceremony or go through a guided therapeutic MDMA or mushroom journey end up experiencing really profound things like having a conversation with God or going back to past life experiences or being able to have conversations with people who are no longer here, who are deceased. And so the experience is described as hallucinogenic. I prefer the term entheogenic, which means an other than ordinary experience. And I believe that when we use these tools, and I'm not suggesting that these are some sort of panacea, because I'm going to talk to you about how you can actually restructure your perception and your nervous system in the same way that these tools do without needing the drug or the medicine. But when we use these tools, our perception expands and we're able to see what was always there, but that we were blocked from being able to access, whether it's information, insights, clarity, conversations. And so the first opportunity is to start reorienting your reality with a new decision, right? A new decision that is equal and opposite from a limiting belief. I talk about the power of decision, that beliefs are actually decisions. And when you make a new decision, 3 really incredible things happen. Number one, when you decide, for example, that prosperity is your birthright and you don't know how, you don't know when, but you're going to make $1 million, you start to have thoughts and ideas in alignment with generating that outcome, healing your body, finding your soulmate. And so now all of a sudden, instead of thinking that money is hard to make or that you're going to be alone for the rest of your life or in chronic pain for the rest of your life, you start to have thoughts, ideas, inclination, inspiration, intuition that's in alignment with this outcome that is based on the new decision. Number 2, your perception of reality changes. So the moment you make a new decision, you start to notice evidence that supports the new decision rather than noticing evidence that supports the old limiting belief. And so this is something that we see all the time in our coaching programs because we work with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs will transform their beliefs around themselves, their beliefs around business, their beliefs around money. And within a fairly short period of time, they'll say, you won't believe it. I generated a $15,000 client and it was somebody that was always in front of me. It was somebody that I already knew. And the reason for this is that you're experiencing a reality based on your belief systems. And so where you have limiting beliefs, you're preventing miracles in your life. Hey, it's David. Just a quick interruption to your regularly scheduled episode by your favorite sponsor, moi. I want to tell you about my book. It is available on Amazon right here, right now. A Changed Mind, Go Beyond Self-Awareness, Rewire Your Brain, and Re-engineer Your Reality. In this little book are all the frameworks, the tools, the methodologies that I talk about on this show and that I've used to actually change my mind and that tens of thousands of other people have used to transform their bank accounts, their businesses, their relationships, their health, their spiritual connection, everything that you want to achieve. This is the way to achieve it. And Amazon has done us a good one right now. It's significantly discounted. So you can go and pick up your copy, or better yet, pick up a copy for a friend too. There's nothing better than giving the gift of transformation right now. Hop on over to Amazon. There's a link in the show notes. And if you love the book as much as I loved writing it for you, do me a favor, let me know that and leave a review. And now back to your regularly scheduled episode. When you shift your beliefs, it seems as if a miracle occurs, but really what you're doing is you're reorienting yourself to a version of reality, a dimension of reality that always existed, but you're choosing to open and step through a different door. There's a part of the brain, it's called the reticular activating system. It's that part of your brain that starts to notice a car that you just bought everywhere on the road. You're like, oh my God, everybody just bought the same car that I just purchased. It's not that the car became more popular. It's that the filter that you're unconsciously using to observe your reality has shifted. In fact, neuroscience tells us that 88% of your perceptive reality, in other words, what you are observing, you filter out of your conscious mind. The 12% that you pay attention to is only that which aligns with what it is that you've believed or you've decided. So I want you to think for a moment about what limiting belief you feel is filtering your reality right now, and drop it into the comments. Again, if you're joining on YouTube, if you're listening on audio, just take note, because if you're trying to achieve goals and dreams and achieve your full potential in your life, The areas that are hitting a ceiling or where you might feel stuck are areas where you've made an unconscious decision that's not congruent with the outcome that you want. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about creating miracles, the laws of miracle making, manipulating or shaping physics around you. Your reality is reflecting back to you what you've decided reality will be for you. Now, significantly what plays a significant role in all of this is your nervous system, because you can't receive a miracle if you're constantly in fight or flight, if you're in what we would call a primal state or a shutdown state. So the body has to be able to feel safe, receptive, and surrendered in order to receive the miracle. In other words, in order to allow life to reorganize and reflect back to you your new decision. You can't make a new decision, for example, around money and then constantly be moving into fight or flight because you're noticing your bank account. I teach an equation. It's called desire plus non-resistance equals desired result. And what this equation is essentially saying is that any miracle that you want to perform or shift you want to perform in your life or desire you have can be accomplished through one thing and one thing only, which is non-resistance. In other words, it's not desire plus figure out how produces the desired result, or desire plus hustle and grind equals desired result, or even desire plus have enough money or have enough time or have enough skills or be intelligent equals desired result. That's why what we're talking about here is miracle making. It seems like a miracle because all that you're being asked to be is non-resistant, both to the outcome that you desire and as you live your day-to-day life. Most of us, when we want to perform a miracle in our life, make a new decision, we create a vision board, but if you notice, the internal dialogue most of the day is in resistance to the vision. Questioning when it's going to happen, wondering if it ever will, judging ourselves, judging other people, comparing ourselves to other people, being in indecision, feeling like we can't get started unless we know the how. This is all resistance. This moves us into what we would call a primal state. So the real problem around creating what you want, in other words, what's preventing you from creating a miracle in your life, is nothing more than resistance. And when you drop the resistance, the result 100% of the time will materialize itself. And that's why we call it a miracle. You know, I look at how I met my wife. It was a miracle, but I had made a decision that I'd meet a beautiful Colombian woman and make her my wife. So life lined up a series of circumstances and situations that produced the outcome. And I look back on it and say, wow, that was a miracle. No, it was a decision plus non-resistance. I look at the first event that my wife and I ever did for this business. We decided we were going to have 300 people at our first Powerful Living experience, the annual live event that we do. People said we were crazy. Nobody knows your brand. We can see other people. They're getting 20 people, 50 people, maybe 100 people at their first event. You have to work your way up. And we said, no, we understand that we are miracle makers. That's what we are, in cooperation with a higher intelligence. We get to ask, and then it is given. And so we decided we would have 300 people at our first event. We ended up with 330 through a series of really powerful coincidences and synchronicities that occurred a few weeks right before we started. So I have this story in my life over and over and over again. You know, my wife and I tried in vitro fertilization. We believed for a while that she was too old to get pregnant naturally, and I was too old to impregnate her naturally, one way or the other. And so she was 44 years old, I was 46 years old, and the in vitro fertilization didn't work out. We still had the desire to have a child. We gave up resistance around it, which really our pursuit of in vitro fertilization represented for us. 2 months later, we were pregnant with Gabriel, my son. So the body must feel safe, receptive, and surrendered in order to be able to receive miracles. You must operate in non-resistance, both in your belief to the miracle itself, but in general. And all of us operate in only one of two states of being. We call them powerful states or primal states. Powerful states are states of being that feel good. States of being like joy, curiosity, excitement, calm, peace, compassion. This is when you're in the parasympathetic expression of your nervous system, the rest and relaxation. And this is when you're connected to solutions. You're connected to God, your higher power, the universe, inspiration, intuition, health, vibrancy, money, presence, intimacy, relationship, purpose, clarity. That all exists and is received in a powerful state of being. And then there's primal states, states of being that don't feel good. States like stress, anxiety, overwhelm, anger, jealousy. This moves us into indecision, procrastination, feeling less than, worry, overwhelm. This is the sympathetic expression of the nervous system. This is fear. It's fight, flight, and freeze. And in this state of being, we're disconnected from solution. This is the resistance that I talk about in desire plus non-resistance equals desired result. Powerful states are non-resistant states. Primal states are resistant states. So if you want to mathematically and empirically perform miracles in your life, it's not a complicated formula. Step 1 is decide. Step 2 is move into non-resistance. And not just to the miracle itself, but in your day-to-day life. That's why so many of the episodes on this show, I talk about how to move from a primal state back into a powerful state. Because you're always in one state of being or the other, and you're never in two states of being at the same time. And the amount of time that you spend in a powerful state will directly correlate to the miracles that occur in your life. The amount of time you spend in a primal state will directly correlate to the blocks or the stuckedness that you experience in your life. Again, if you're watching the show on YouTube, and you can just notate this if you're listening on audio, I want you to come up with a number. If you were to add up all the time that you spend stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, in some fear of financial insecurity, comparing yourself to other people, judging yourself or judging other people, worried or overwhelmed, thinking you should have done something or shouldn't have done something, or thinking other people should or shouldn't have done something, or in any way, shape, or form entangled with that negative inner critic, that voice in your head that's telling you that you're not enough, you're not doing enough, you're not as far along as you should be. On average, how many hours a day are you spending in a primal state? You can just drop it into the comment box. Come up with your number. Because this is the indicator, this is the one measurement that you can work on to decrease, and as you do, you will increase your capacity as a miracle maker. The average amount of time, based on me asking this question to tens of thousands of people, is about 8 hours a day. Many people, like myself, start out 24 hours a day in what we would call a primal state. Some people only spend 1 or 2 hours a day, but even at 2 hours a day, it's 700 hours a year operating from the problem, operating in in resistance. So again, it's important. The body must feel safe. It must feel receptive. It must feel surrendered. And there's a lot of great tools out there, from toning your vagus nerve, right, which is the big nerve that runs through the center of your body, through your chest, that actually is, you can think of it as the switch that determines whether you're in a primal or powerful state. And you can tone this nerve through things like cold plunging or breath work or humming or chanting. There's somatic release to release the tension that's accumulated in your body that's moving you into a primal state, like shaking or emotional expression. There are affirmations. You could work at a psychological and emotional level to shift your beliefs, doing affirmations that resonate with your nervous system truth. Or beliefs work, like a lot of the work that we talk about on this show, or prayer, or getting into heart-centered surrender practices, right? Again, miracles aren't something you force, they're something you receive once your emotional state of being and your field are coherent. And so I'm curious, because I want to learn from you as well. Are you using any of these tools? Are there some tools that you're using to regulate your nervous system and be in a receptive mode, to be in non-resistance? Because that's the second part of this formula for creating miracles. The third piece is living as the outcome fulfilled. Like living as the person who receives the miracle, right? Because when you're living that way, you don't chase it. You're living as if it's already done. And then the miracle arrives to meet you. And so how do you do this? Well, number one, you have to understand how reality works, and that you have been given an ability to simply decide and to then down-regulate your nervous system and then observe the shift as it starts to occur. Like, if you don't get that this is the way that reality works, of course you're going to be operating from a primal state, confused, frustrated, wondering why your life isn't changing, living as the same reality day in and day out. I have referenced before the great movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, a comedic classic. And, in that movie, Bill Murray is living the same day over and over and over and over again. And it's a very funny movie, but it's not funny because he starts to find really creative ways to kill himself. And what most people are doing today are finding really creative ways to live a dead life, to check out through social media, drinking, drugging, pornography, living in anger, living in depression, medicating themselves, all as a result of simply not understanding how reality works. But there's an opportunity for you to ask a question, which is, what would it look like for me to live as the fulfilled version of myself today? In other words, if I know that I've already decided and I've asked, and that it's only a matter of time before through me and around me the miracle occurs and I materialize the desire that I have, how would you be living differently today? One of my good friends, Cody Jefferson, who emceed my annual event this year, has a saying that he shared with everyone, which was super powerful. He said, "This is who I am, so this is what I do." And he said, you get to define the identity that you're going to live into. In other words, if you were already healthy, who would you be? If you were already in your dream relationship, whether it's your existing relationship transformed or a new relationship that you've attracted, who would you be? If you had millions in your bank account, you living your purpose in life, and you were making a great impact and had amazing relationships, name that person. Give that future version of yourself a name. And then ask yourself, how would that person be showing up today? Because one of the fastest ways that you can create miracles is to close the gap between the person that you are today and the person who's actually received the miracle. If you start being the person who's received the miracle today, it is the fastest way for that miracle to actually materialize into your life. So simple formula. Number 1, decide. Number 2, make sure you support it in non-resistance, a downregulated nervous system. And number 3, live as that future self today. And hey, if this episode opens something in you, send it to someone who's ready to live in miracle logic too. And if you want more content like this, you're following along on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you get notifications, leave me a comment. As well, if you're listening on the audio platforms, leave me a rating or review and share this episode with somebody. I love waking up in the morning and seeing comments that someone else shared an episode and paid it forward. And last but not least, if you haven't yet, you can jump on over to davidbear.com. You can download my Mind Hack ebook for free. I've got a bunch of videos, a bunch of content, a webinar. You can check it all out to go deeper on this journey with me, because this is a do it with each other experience. I love you so much. Thank you for being with me here on this episode, and I will see you in the next episode. Hey, it's David. Hop on over to davidbear.com. Click right here. There's also a link in the show notes, and sign up for our newsletter. You'll get immediate access to my free Mind Hack ebook, as well as a couple of trainings to help you master the inner game. This is a great way to stay informed and be a part of our community and be notified of special announcements. Click below, head on over to the website, get subscribed. If you loved this video, make sure you check out this one or this one, and I will see you in the next video.